are the updates to the new website for the quiltcalculator.com. You'll see this is the home page, and right now when you click on the quilt calculator or you click on home or calculators, you get the same home page right now. So it will be changed later, but you can always go to the calculators button and you will see the 6 main quilt calculators. This is design and size of quilt, and we went through that last week. This is squares and rectangles. You put in the size of your square or your rectangle and how many you need, and it will calculate the fabric requirements and the cutting instructions for those. This is the half square triangles. You put in the finished half square triangle size, how many you need, and you choose from the method to piece them for rotary cutting, either 2 at a time or 8 at a time half square triangles. The next one is the quarter square triangles. So you put in the finished size of the quarter square triangle and how many you need, and you will get fabric requirements and cutting instructions. Same thing with flying geese, 4 at a time. You input the flying geese size and how many you need. Then this is the side and corner setting triangles. You put in the block size and it will tell you what size you need to cut and how many you need to cut. So we'll go through a few of those in a little bit, just because we went through it last week, and I want to show you the new things that have come up. Over here on the sidebar, the very first one is Buy Me a Coffee. If you want to contribute, you can just buy a coffee, and I do appreciate it if you do. It helps pay for this website. And then I have a link to design or size a quilt, because I think this is going to be the one that you use most often. So if you click this, it opens in a new window, and you still have the other window to get to. So let's quickly go over this for people who haven't seen it before. This is, you can put in the project name, and you put in the block size, the finished width, and let's put 12 inches, and the length, let's put 12 inches. And then to determine your quilt size, you start putting in the number of blocks across and blocks down. This is your setting. If we put 4 blocks across and 7 blocks down, it gives you results here. So it tells you the quilt width and length is 48 by 84. The total number of blocks is 28. This is your binding fabric. You need 0.49 yards, and you cut 7 strips at 2.5 inches times width of fabric. We don't have sashing, cornerstones, or border put in, but if we did, these would be filled out. And here is the backing fabric. So let's go back up here for a second. And so we have our block size in there. We leave this in here, and then we can start playing with these blocks across and blocks down. So if I change these numbers here, you'll see the results instantly change. So let's change it to 6 blocks across, and you see now the quilt is 72 by 84. The number of blocks is updated. The binding fabric and the backing fabric have all updated. So every time you put in these new numbers, it updates. If you want to add a sashing, let's have a 3-inch sashing. You'll see it updated the size of the quilt. The total blocks is the same. The binding fabric has gone up because the quilt is bigger. Now you have your fabric requirements and your cutting instructions for your sashing and your cornerstones. Someone made the suggestion that I also give the option for sashing, just straight sashing with no cornerstones. So that's on the list to add later. And then the backing fabric. So that is the sizing of quilt, and I'm going to show you another way to use this toward the end of this video. So I'm going to click on to the front page we came from and finish showing you the sidebar. So I have a chart here that will always stay on this sidebar. It's the yards fraction to decimals, because in the calculators we always use decimals. So this is a good lookup for you, and it will be on the side of every page. And then I have just a bunch of ads here, and these are companies that I buy from and I recommend, and I've been very happy with their services and their products. And here is my affiliate disclosure. So if you click on any of these and you buy any of their products, I do get a small commission, and it does not affect the price you pay. So here is the footer, and we have FAQ, and right now there's only one question. Privacy policy, I'll need to update. Here's where you can contact me and just send me an email, and I try to answer all of my emails. So let's go back here, and then here are links to my YouTube channel and the Facebook group, the Quilters Workshop. If you want to join that workshop, you'll have to answer just a couple of questions, and then we'll let you in. So I wanted to show you FAQ because this is new. I have one whole question here, but let's look at this question. My quilt top is pieced, and I am ready for quilting, then binding. How much fabric do I need for backing and binding? And this is common. Say you pieced this quilt top, I don't know, a year ago, and now you're ready to quilt it. So let's click on here for the answer. So this says head over to the Design Size of Quilt calculator. Treat your quilt top like a giant block. And then I give you the steps to do it. So let's do that now. So here's the design and size of quilt, and we'll go back to the bottom. This is the one we just looked at. And we're going to treat the quilt top like a giant block. So you measure the width and the length of your quilt top. And these are not precise numbers because it's backing and binding fabric. So let's just say you measured 67 inches across and 78 inches down. And the block setting, we have one block. So it's one block across and one block down. And then we look at our results. We see here is the quilt width and length, and this is your quilt top. Total number of blocks is 1. And then here is the binding fabric you need for that quilt. And here is the backing fabric you need for that quilt. Okay, so that's that. Now let me close this one. And we looked at frequently asked questions. Now let's go up here to quilts. This is what you saw last week. This is the Scrappy Log Cabin, and this page will be populated with quilts that have either calculators attached to them or some other way you can have a block and convert that to a quilt for as many blocks as you want, and it'll calculate it for you. So if we click on this that we saw last week, here is the video showing you how to do the block, and here are just information about what I used for that project. And here you just put in the number of blocks. Let's say I need 50 blocks, no, let's say 45 blocks. And you would get this number of blocks from the Design and Size of Quilt app that we just went through. And then you put 45 in for the number of blocks, and you see for rotary cutting you have assorted lights. This is what you need. Assorted medium and darks, they're the same requirements as the lights. And the dark accent fabric, here's what you need. In this one I included 2 different AccuQuilt dies with the fabric requirements for all of those 2. So that's what you get under quilts, and sometimes there will be blocks there as well. The next is the AccuQuilt section. Right now I just have the pineapple die. So this is the pineapple AccuQuilt die. There's information there about using the die. Here's the video I made on that. It will be here. And a little bit more information. And then we have the calculator for your AccuQuilt die. Again, you'll need the number of blocks. You'll get that from your Design or Size of Quilt. And you'll put the number of blocks in here. So let's say we want 25 blocks. We just put 25 in and immediately our results show up. Here's the light fabric, and this is the shape on the die, and this is how you cut the pieces. For AccuQuilt, you can use just the strips, and you can fan fold those on top of your die, but I prefer to cut the pieces, the rough cut of the pieces, because especially on the block on board dies, sometimes they're close to each other. But you have both of those calculations if you want. So this is the light fabric, it's just for this shape. Now the dark fabric is for these 3 shapes. Here is the total dark fabric, and this is the total of shape A, shape H, and this shape C, E, F, G. That's the total. Then you have your individual totals here. Now let's move on to something else that's new up here at Reference. this is going to be your reference page, and there'll be all of the different references will be on this page. My first one is called How Many Squares Chart. I know you've seen the charts that say how many squares can I get from a fat quarter, and you have your certain size squares. So let's click on this. And why would you want to know how many squares you can get when, say, you want something like a heart applique, or maybe you want a hexagon? Well, you turn that shape that you want into a square, and you use that in this calculator. This is what I'm showing you. This is a heart example. That is, the heart is 3 inches by 4.5 inches, and this is the cut size. So you would choose a square that's 4.5 inches and use that in this calculator. Same thing with the circles, and this is a video on a circle quilt I did with instructions for making your quilt. And here is another circle quilt. Same thing. I figured out how much fabric I needed for these circles, and if I had enough fabric of my fabric pieces. And some AccuQuilt comments on there too. So here we enter the square cut size. So let's say at the top for the heart we needed 4.5 inches. So we put 4.5 in there. Here are the results. From a 10-inch square, which is a layer cake, you can get 2 strips at 4.5 times 10 inches, or 4 squares at 4.5 inches. Same things with the fat eighth. This is what you can get in strips and squares. Fat quarter, strips and squares. Half yard, strips and squares, and yard, strips and squares. So that's what is new this week. I'm going to be adding comments on the bottom, so if you want to make a comment or have a question, you can do that. And I try to answer and read I do read everything. I can't always answer everything, but I try. And if you have a question, try to be as specific as you can. If you ask a question like, I don't understand in the video about how you put this or that together. Sometimes I don't know what you're talking about, so if you can go to the video and give me a timestamp. At this timestamp you said such and such and I don't understand that. So that helps me, and I'll be able to answer your question that way. Otherwise, I can't answer your question because I don't really know what you're asking. So that's what I have this week. No quilt actually, but you do have some quilts here you can look at and some videos. And next week I'm going to try to start updating you twice a week of little short updates of what I'm adding to this website. I've transferred the old website over here, and it might take a day or two when you type in thequiltcalculator.com. If you type that in, it should forward to this website, and this website is called quiltnotes.com. So stay tuned. I have a lot more stuff for you and some more AccuQuilt. I'm already working on next week's video, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel, and while you're at it, click the bell to be notified of future videos.